And as you just heard, folks, you heard the theme of Game of Thrones, and this is a live stream that we will be discussing Game of Thrones. I am echoing. The theme of Game of Thrones, and this is a live stream. I think we're echoing here. I have everything closed except for mine. And we're good. There we go. All right. So a little technical noise to start.
My bad. My iPad, brother. My iPad.
No worries there. But anyhow, as you heard, we are talking Game of Thrones today. So welcome to the newly branded Moist Visions Inc. Get moist and get voiced. Welcome aboard, and joining me today to talk about season 1 of Game of Thrones. If you can remember 8 years ago, well, actually 9, because they didn't do anything last year. Or my timeline's all screwed up because of the lag between season 7 and 8. If you can remember back 8 or 9 years ago when you first watched it, or if you can remember back in the 90s when you first read A Game of Thrones, the first book of A Song of Ice and Fire series, we're going to be talking about that. We're going to be dropping spoilers probably for the rest of the series. At first, what we're going to do is try to keep it a little spoiler free for the first 10-15 minutes. And then after that, we're going to go into full-blown spoilers. And if you're not aware, this will be a live stream hosted bi-weekly by myself and my fellow co-host, Black Angus Reviews.
Hey.
And joining us also, we did have Superfan Adam Shawhan up. He is back here. Superfan Adam Shawhan.
Hello. Don't know what happened. It just kind of booted me out for a second.
It's been YouTube has been a little weird today. And also joining us is one of the hundreds of members of the Jer Army. It is Hallmark Channel Jeremy.
How you doing, Mr. Moist?
We are doing well. Welcome aboard. And I'm glad to have everybody here today. I'm trying to pull up the live chat here. So as I said, we were talking season 1 of Game of Thrones. Can you guys remember back when you first were introduced to Game of Thrones, or did you watch it when it first came out? Did you read the books? Like, how did you get introduced to Game of Thrones?
He has diarrhea really bad.
Well, I remember it started on HBO, and when I first started watching it, it instantly reminded me of when I first read well, let's see what I'm trying to now. I just drew a blank. I just the Hobbit. When you first started reading Lord of the Rings, that's what it kind of reminded me of when you first start watching it, and I was pretty excited. But yeah, it would have been when HBO started first playing it. I hadn't read the books, but I know I was excited.
Yeah, and I say it sounds like Black Angus is taking care of some things there. But Hallmark, how about you? How were you introduced to Game of Thrones?
I'm not sure exactly how I came across it, other than just channel surfing maybe one time, and it's like, oh hey, what's this? And I've always liked like that type of, for lack of a better term, medieval,
Fantasy.
swords and all that stuff, and so just the way they did it, it's just like all these different kingdoms, either being friendly or enemy towards each other, and yeah,
and I think Game of Thrones, it's the perfect mix between the fantasy and the medieval genres. It combines those two perfectly, I think. How about you, Black Angus? How were you introduced to Game of Thrones?
Well, I didn't have HBO when I was out of AIT back in, I would say, 2012 into 2013. I guess I became a little aware of the show. I wanted to see it. I was aware. I wanted to watch it. It looked cool, but didn't have the opportunity. And when I was going to Afghanistan, I ended up getting the what do you call it? The rec center part of our barracks, because there'd been multiple units through there, so they had like a library of DVDs and games for the Xbox 360. So we had Game of Thrones season 2. Ended up finding season 1 on digital from someone torrenting, and I tried to watch it. And all the guys, because I was in an infantry squad, they're all a bunch of meatheads, and they're like, "Oh, what do you watch the dumb LARP show?" and mocking me. But then they saw it had boobs, and then they got involved, and then they started binging it for what was available. So it's so funny how the tables turn, and they don't even realize it. And I kind of subsequently, while watching the first couple seasons, I started reading them. I'm like, "Oh my god, this is written so cinematically." I loved it, and it's kind of funny how I always point out about HBO, how a lot of their shows hook their main audience with the kind of the very carnal, primal desires of like violence and sex, specifically like female beauty and nudity, but they use that to lure you to see something that's actually very grandiose and beautiful and well developed.
Exactly what you just said there. And with using female nudity and sex and all that stuff is like more of a power mechanism in a sense. Spoiler alert, we're just gonna hop right into the spoilers, to be honest with you. I mean, you kind of can't. In season 1, we had numerous instances of Emilia Clarke, aka Daenerys Targaryen, having to, she did a lot of sex scenes, nudity scenes, and it really showed how she was, being abused within her, but her character was being abused, but it was setting up for the power. And I think in season 6 was whenever she went to Vice Dothrak and burned down the Dothraki capital, essentially. And she walked out of the fire completely naked or whatever, and everyone bowed down. So she was at she appeared vulnerable, but she appeared strong as fuck. And that's honestly not because of that scene and, her being naked or whatever. That is one of my top scenes of Game of Thrones, is just the badass bitch moment that you just had there. And I think season 1 does a great job of setting up the vulnerability of Daenerys Targaryen to lead her to be the powerful figure that she is today and going into season 8, now that she's in Westeros. So major spoiler, if you guys didn't know that, she has crossed the Narrow Sea. But so let's go back to episode 1. It's okay, everybody here in the chat or on the Hangouts here, if you don't remember each episode by its name, I'm sure not going to. I'll remember bits and pieces, and I have a few pieces of the season that stood out to me. But whenever I watched season 1, episode 1, the other day, I played a little drinking game with myself that I had to stop about 20 minutes in. And that drinking game was, let's take a sip for every time we see someone on the screen that's dead now. And yeah, it went pretty quick. I was done about 20 minutes into the episode. So we have what I think season 1, episode 1 did. I think it did a great job introducing the vast amount of characters that we're going to see throughout this entire series as we go on. And I think it did it in a very well-balanced way. You got to meet the North. You got to meet the Lannisters. You got to meet the Baratheons, the Targaryens. You got to meet it all. Obviously, the big focus was, King Joffrey, or not King Joffrey yet, King Robert Baratheon and his Lannister crew and Baratheon crew visiting Ned Stark in Winterfell. I think that they did a great job looking back at it. They did a great job introducing all of these characters. And as you know, with Game of Thrones, there is a fuckload of characters. So what are you guys' thoughts on how they brought in the new characters and introduced them to everybody? And, if you haven't read the books, clearly you aren't, clearly, every other page a new character is being brought in. But for those consuming the show, I think that they did a well-balanced job of doing that and introducing them.
Well, season 1, episode 1, I felt they did a very good job as an opening. I mean, if that's the only episode you saw, I mean, to me, you were hooked. because you're going to know within the first 5 minutes whether it's something you're going to want to watch or not. I don't know very many people that wouldn't, because it's not that you have to like a specific style. You know, it's not horror. It's not just, you know, oh, look, we got a bunch of goofy people dressed up in knight's gear, or, you know, oh, now we're going to go back to King Arthur's time. It had so much just within the first, you know, 5-10 minutes, where I don't know about you guys, but I know it pulled me in. And like I said, I hadn't read any of the books. It kind of reminded me of Tolkien when I was watching it. I mean, immediately I was just in. I wasn't going anywhere.
Yeah, how about Black Angus, Hallmark?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
We're saying about like how they introduced everybody in season 1 with episode 1, how everybody coming into Winterfell, and you know, you get the brief intro with Viserys and Daenerys as well. Just how do you think that? How do you think they were able to master that balance? Where we have, you know, you look at different movies today and different TV shows, they're just chucking characters at you left and right. And yes, Game of Thrones did chuck all these characters at you, but they balanced it in such a perfect way where you could be like, okay, so this is this person, this is this person, this is their mission. You can tell they don't like this person, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, no, they really did well. You know, having been aware of the whole show now, and then rewatching it just like a week or two ago, and seeing everyone get it, just like, wow, they took their time. You know, like something Rookie Critic, he's so avoidant to watch the show. He's finally going to, I think, but he tried to before with the hype, and he couldn't get into it because he's like, oh, there's so many characters I can't care about them, and this and that. It's like, oh, dude, you gotta give it time. Like, you know, what you might complain about with like the movie It remake, or even probably the original, where it's like you got a fuck ton of kid characters and you don't really get any time with anyone. This show utilizes its format of being a show and having more time to all right, here's these people, this is their position. You start to, you know, get very adamant views of like, this guy's good, this guy's bad, and as the show progresses, they blur that. Even within this first season, they kind of start blurring it, you know, with King Rob, with Stark, and show you the consequences, and vice versa. And I love the moral ambiguity of the whole show, but season 1 off the bat has a lot of moral ambiguity and defies tropes. So the way they set everything up is just phenomenal. Looking back, realizing like, man, I wonder how these guys pitched this show to HBO, or if it was someone in HBO wanting to do it, or if it was Benioff and Weiss that just came out of the blue, like, hey, let's try to make this show. And I'm wondering, like, how the hell do you pitch this show? It's so huge. All these characters, like, all right, you got this and that and that and that, and it's like, holy fuck. So I'm just in awe.
Before we get Hallmark's response to this, from what I understand and doing some little background research, George R. R. Martin, HBO, they worked out a deal. But the biggest thing for George R. R. Martin, the creator, the George Lucas of Game of Thrones, and if you ever read any of his other work, it's excellent as well. So there's a little shill for George R. R. Martin. But what his main concern was, who was going to direct Game of Thrones and who's going to write the show. And whenever David Benioff and D.B. Weiss were, you know, applying to direct it and write it, they had a meeting with George R. R. Martin. And in the meeting, George R. R. Martin gave them a page from Game of Thrones and said, he asked one question to interview them. And he said, who is Jon Snow? And apparently, major spoiler, apparently they answered correctly by saying he's Aegon Targaryen. He is the son of Rhaegar and Lyanna Stark. Or
that's not the right answer. He's your kitty.
Yeah, he is the king, essentially, basically. And he is my cat. Jon Snow is my cat. I have named my cat after Jon Snow. He is currently taking a nap.
I'll do you one better. My daughter's middle name is Snow because we were stationed at Fort Drum for 2 years. So we saw the best winter as far as temperate for 30 years. And we saw the worst one in like 30 years when Boston and Buffalo were getting like caved in with snow. So yeah, we love snow and the North so much that we gave our daughter that middle name.
Yeah, that's awesome. And, you know, Jon Snow, that's such a cool name. the snow. And the thing is, I like that it actually has a meaning, that it's snow. And I'm trying to I can't remember where all the different parts of the kingdoms are, where it is because they name the bastards after where they're located and everything. Open-minded movie man, thanks for joining us. Glad to hear. We were talking Game of Thrones today. Mrs. Snow, he never really liked her. Well, hopefully, Jon Snow. We might have a Mrs. Snow. Who knows? Coming up in season 8, it might be Mrs. Daenerys Targaryen Snow. Who knows what's going to be happening there? So hopefully, you'll have a Snow that you'll like in season 8. But Hallmark, what did you think of whenever you first saw when you watched the first episode of Game of Thrones? What were your initial reactions?
Well, I mean, it's whether it be the actors or the directors or whatever, it's just that, I mean, like when I don't know if this is the first episode or what, that the king had come to see the Starks.
Yep, that's the first episode.
And I don't know, you could just you could feel the I don't know, tension or whatnot, and just the I don't know, it just felt compelling, and the
yeah, and I think I know what you mean, because I didn't watch the series until it would have been season 4 would have been out. One of my buddies, or one of my college roommates, actually, he's like, dude, Brandon, you gotta watch. You gotta watch Game of Thrones. You'll love it. You get really into TV shows. You get really into all that stuff. You'll love this. And so I decided to watch it. And let's just say I did go to class for a couple days. I was sick. I emailed my professors and said, I have bad diarrhea. I am not going to be able to make it to class. No, that diarrhea was just me watching Game of Thrones because I was sick, and I binged 3 seasons in 2 or 3 days. And when I saw the Red Wedding in season 3, I had a literal drop the spoon, spit out whatever's in your mouth moment, which we'll go into that in a couple weeks. But looking back at season 1, what are some of the most iconic moments that stick out to you? And I know one thing that we're all going to probably agree on here is Ned Stark's beheading, Sean Bean dying in yet another film, unfortunately.
Again.
Yeah, but I think, but Black Angus, let's start with you here. What are some of the most iconic moments of season 1 that stand out to you?
Oh, I actually wrote a few. What's interesting about Game of Thrones is how they really blend and weave, I say, event moments, like cliffhanger moments, throughout the whole show, where it's like, oh shit, like this could be a cliffhanger of its own, and it might be for an episode, but then we see the fallout anyway throughout the season. But some of the key moments, in no particular order that I picked out, are, of course, death of Ned. Which I love because it reminds me of No Country for Old Men. I love nihilism as an idea to ponder, and moral relativity and stuff. Nothing really matters in the end, even if you need morality to sustain a society or something. So yeah, death of Ned I think is cool because it subverts the whole idea of being morally righteous secures you plot armor. So that's cool. Jaime being captured. I didn't realize it was in the first season he gets captured. See, Robb being proclaimed King of the North in sequence with the Civil War starting out because of Ned. Robert Baratheon being killed beforehand. And the White Walkers start attacking at the beginning of the show. That's a new thing for the Night's Watch. They've been guarding this wall for thousands of years and nothing's really been happening but wildlings. Bran Stark, at the beginning of the show, getting hurt, almost killed. And
that blew my mind.
Nyr's having her dragons. Those are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 key events of this first season.
Yeah, and I think I'll throw out my moments here before we get Superfan Adam Shawhan and Hallmark's most memorable moments. And yeah, pretty much I agree with everything that you had said there. Daenerys getting her dragons, that's a big one for me. And the fact that, and the thing is, it wasn't necessarily established yet, oh, she's just going to walk right into a fire. Like, how does that work? Obviously, I think if you could tell, if you read the books, obviously you knew. But if you're just watching the show, you're just like, oh my God, like, how is she dead? Like, she just killed herself because of Khal Drogo? But, and then you see she emerges and she has the hatched dragons. That's incredible. And that begins to show her rise to power. And I think that the symbolism of that, where she rises up from the ashes, she's naked, she's, she has the 3 dragons. It's like, I literally have nothing but these dragons, and I'm ready to take on the world by storm. And the symbolism in that, I think, is just absolutely incredible. Another moment that stands out to me, and it's because of what we know what happens in season 3 at the Red Wedding. I think it's later on in the season. It's after Robb Stark has gathered the North to go south and fight the Lannisters to hopefully free his father, what he believes. He believes that he will. But whenever they're at the Twins, and the phrase obviously hold the Twins, and Catelyn Stark says, Lord Walder Frey will never hurt me. And that just blew my mind rewatching that season and hearing Catelyn Stark say that he'll never hurt me, and knowing what happens in season 3, that he works with the Lannisters to set up the Red Wedding, in which she ends up having her throat slit. It was like one of the golden nuggets that, the directors and everybody knew what was coming, but at the time you had no idea, and that line probably you didn't even think about it. But looking back at it, now you do. Another moment that sticks out that's a little different what Black Angus had said to me is Tyrion and Jon Snow's fostering of a friendship. That is the first time that they had interacted, and the last time that they interacted until season 7. And they referenced that time on the wall when they first met each other. And, they talk about the missions and the adventures that they had gone through. But when Tyrion pisses off the wall, that was hilarious. Always will be a memorable moment. It's something that I've even said. I'd love to piss off the wall, even though I don't know what wall. I'll just find a wall and piss off of it. Just pretend it's the wall. But I think that Tyrion meeting Jon Snow, and Tyrion actually, pointing out that the fact that they're 2 different people, that as in like one's a dwarf and the other one's a bastard. At this point, we know Jon Snow's a bastard in season 1, and Tyrion accepts that and embraces it. I think that the fact that Tyrion is able to find that difference, that what sets them aside, is just awesome, and that he, uses that to build upon their relationship, even though they don't talk to each other for 6 more seasons. You can tell that there's a camaraderie between them because of that difference, and that they kind of, embrace it. They accept it, and they're going to accept their roles. And that I think also watching those interactions again, looking back after watching season 7's interactions between Tyrion and Jon Snow, I think they both knew that, say a war was to come, they would be the survivors because they're not the norm. And, that's kind of my take on, some of the most memorable moments, aside from Ned Stark's head being cut off, unfortunately. Yeah, it still makes me sad. I mean, honestly, it's one of those moments I watch it and I still got sad watching it. So, Superfan, what are some of the most memorable moments for you? And it could be one that we've talked already, too.
Season 1, episode 1, man. When Ned does the beheading and makes his son watch and makes the kids watch the beheading from, excuse me, from the Night's Watch person that took off.
Yeah, and I think, and whenever, I think it's Jon Snow actually tells Bran not to look away.
Yeah.
Because father will be looking.
Yes. So, that was, like I said, if you can't enjoy it within the first 5 to 10 minutes, because it's been a while since I've watched episode 1. First you got, something killing things. You're like, what's going on? Then you go to that right away, and father's always watching, and they sit there and watch it. And then to have later, however many episodes later it is, when now Ned's being beheaded, by a little prick king that, you know, and Aya, she sits there and sees it, and, you know, sees what happens to her father. The build up between the sisters is excellent, especially in the later episodes when they get Littlefinger.
Mhm.
That to me has to be one of the hugest payoffs of a character build up, along with
Oh my God, yeah. No, I know exactly what you mean. Yes.
Yep. I don't want it because I'm just gonna spit shit out, but I'm gonna keep it real simple because there's just too much to go over, and since this is really season 1, but Tyrion's road, dude, I love every bit of him, between who he kills, when he kills them, when he's on the wall, and he you know, saves the battle when you know. Don't call her a whore one more time, and then what happens. Oh my good Lord, beautiful. I've been in arguments with people who'd only seen season 1, maybe some of 2, and be like, well, there's no character build up. They just kill everybody. It's like, you have to watch the entire series, because at the end is where you get the character payoffs. It builds these characters to the point you understand why they go and turn the way they do. They don't just kill everybody and go to a next person. It seems like that at first, but in the end, at least in my opinion, it truly is the next Breaking Bad, or, you know, it's even better, because it sucks that this could be the end, or is going to be the end. But this series has got to be one of the greatest series that has been put on TV, I feel, in a very long time.
Yeah, and I think you know, as what you said, that I know some people, even some friends of mine that I have from work, they even two of them in particular, like, oh, we just couldn't get into it with season 1, and it's like, okay, you know, season 1 really, I can't think of another series, and I mean, I'm even including Breaking Bad and all this, and The Walking Dead until it kind of went down the drain, but you know, I can't think of a series that, you know, its entire season 1 built up characters and built up the choices that they will make, and started a character arc that would later be finished, you know, in such a, you know, satisfying way. And some of them aren't done yet, but we can see where they're going. You know, I can't think of another series that has done that. And you know, it just kind of blows, like, rewatching it blew my mind, where the forward planning by not only, you know, obviously with George R. R. Martin laying the blueprint, but by D.B. Benninghoff and D.B. Wise was just absolutely incredible. That they had, you know, they knew how they were. It's like, we have points, we know that we're going to get there at some point, but, you know, enjoy the journey. And I think Tyrion, at his journey in season 1, he goes from being fucking prostitutes in episode 1 to
wine
on the wall, drinking wine, pissing off the wall, and then all of a sudden he's captured and he is tried at the Knights of the Vale. You know, he meets Bronn. Like, his story, like, basically what I'm trying to get to is Tyrion represents the kind of a ride that you're going to go on with this show, and you just don't know what the hell is going to be coming at you next.
I love just that's the thing. There's so much character buildup. How do you go from an arrogant little shithead who, you know, has some good conversations, who's fucking whores, drinking wine, pissing off walls, not giving a shit, to then, you know, you end up saving the biggest, you know, the first big war that we see with the water and everything, and then he's on, you know, he's in battle gear, he's ready to go, to then he's in a basket and being kidnapped, to then, you know, to where he is today as Hand. You know, it's just great, man. And I just feel that even going back to the Battle of the Bastards, everything was built up properly, executed properly. This is a TV show shot like a full every episode, just about.
Well, just for everybody's information here, each episode for season 8 had a budget of $15 million or over. So, you know, with that kind of a budget, Ron Howard might have gone wild with Soilo. But I say, so Black Angus, what, you know, so we talked a little about Tyrion's journey, kind of, you know, representing what we're going to see with Game of Thrones. Were there any other storylines that you saw that were really picked up that maybe it wasn't, Jon Snow at the Wall or, Daenerys, one of the major characters. I'm going to say Ned. I'm going to exclude Ned, Jon, and Tyrion, and Daenerys, and Cersei at this point. What were some of the side characters and side storylines that you really picked up on? And Hallmark too, you can comment as well.
Well, I really loved. Okay, so first time I watched these, like, I'll try to put it in perspective for viewers. I watched season 1 and 2 in Afghanistan before I was married or had kids, and I hadn't really watched them since before my son was born, even when I was back in America. So it's been a while since I actually watched the first couple of seasons, and usually the first season or two, you see like a very juvenile, mediocre production compared to like later seasons of really big shows. Like Breaking Bad is one where it's like, it's really feels like they're shoestring budget until like season
relying on that RV in the middle of the desert.
Yeah, and looking back, this show has been consistent. Maybe the CGI has been a little wonky when it started, and the dragons are still a little wonky when you put people on them. But no, like the two that really stuck out to me being a dad was Robb Stark when his dad's dead and he's like banging his sword on the tree, and his mom's like, "You've ruined your sword" and stuff. And it's like, oh god, it made me think of this movie called, one of my favorite movies I plan to review, called A Monster Calls. And the main thread is a mother who's Jen Erso is dying of cancer, and you're following the story through the eyes of her 12-year-old son, who's not he's not a man, but he's not really a boy, and he's a loner and he's picked on. And so you have the duality of a boy dealing with a parent's death way too early in life and being alone, not knowing how to deal with it. But you also have the inverse of the mother knowing she's dying and giving this pain way too early to her son. And there's hints of that in that small moment with Robb Stark, that being a parent hit me a different way than when I first saw it, where I'm like, okay, yes, dad's dead, whatever. It's like, no, like that's something I really dread, the idea of dying too early for my kids. Mm-hmm. So like just that emotion they conveyed, like it brought a tear to my eye the second time I've seen it. And the relationship with Rob Baratheon and Cersei, a little, like he loves to whore around, especially when Jaime, the brother of Cersei, is on guard. Yeah, Kingsguard, and so he loves to really get a lot of whores for him to listen to him boning when Jaime's outside the door. That's a funny character hint, but then when there's like that moment where him and Cersei are drinking wine, and it's like, was it ever like happy, or do you think this would ever have worked between us? And just like that hint of dissatisfaction with all the money he's got, all the wars he's fought, and the hookers and the whores he's fucked. He's just got this void that would probably be filled if his queen was someone he loved or that loved him. And it's like, man, for a guy who gets, off one season, like they really made me like him and empathize and see that like he's a failure as a king. He was a conqueror, but he failed as a king. Normally, if you're a good conqueror, you're a good king in these stories. So those two really stuck out to me.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. And I'm glad that you brought up the moment where him and Cersei are drinking wine together. Whenever, honestly, it felt like there was a connection between them there at one point, because it was like they were trying to understand each other, and they both realized we are in a shit situation. We were put in this. We did not want to be put in this, but we're just kind of accept where we're at here. And I think, whenever Cersei asks him about Lyanna Stark, and you really get to see how much Robb cared about Lyanna, and that, there's a reason why he's just whoring around. He's just, drinking himself to death, basically. He doesn't care. It's because he has that missing link, which is Lyanna. And, I think Cersei knows that she's never going to fill that. And I think she knows that she's just in this for the power. Which is a role that she, definitely embraces. But I think that the fact that they took time to show the internal struggles of Robert Baratheon, as brief of a time that they showed it, I think it was just, very thoughtful and really fleshed out his character, even though we only saw him in like 7 episodes. So Hallmark, what are some other storylines that you really enjoyed? Aside from like the Jon Snows and the Daenerys of the first season.
Well, I don't know. I might I might have to actually comment on those anyway. But
Yep. Yeah, that's
um,
what you do.
one of the one of my favorite moments. I don't know, not necessarily a storyline, but one of my favorite moments is when oh crap, uh, Khaleesi. I can't
Daenerys. Yeah.
Daenerys. Yeah,
Yep.
when Drogo has her brother on his knees
Oh my God.
and,
Yes.
and pours the
Yes.
molten gold over his head. I mean, that was just that was, as the kids say today, epic. You know, I mean, it was just you were like, holy crap, you know, because the guy's like, oh well, you know, if you're the great person that can withstand fire, blah blah blah. Let's see, you know, and it's ah.
Yeah, and
And
I think what you've just said there, I think it, looking back, that was 8 years ago, and I think, that is a lesson that I think it's a subliminal message that to society as a whole, and that's what I love about Game of Thrones. They have these subliminal messages, that women can have positions of power and like be great rulers. But in Game of Thrones, you don't think about it. When you think about something like Star Wars, it's so forced. Game of Thrones, they do it so naturally, and that you don't even think about. And you're just like, oh shit, look, most of the women are still alive. All the guys are pretty much dead. And I think that moment in particular, with Viserys having the crown for a king, as what Khal Drogo said, having the golden crown is a lesson in entitlement, and that people think that, oh well, I'm this age, or my parents do this, I do this or whatever. I deserve this. I deserve the best. I deserve this. I deserve blah blah blah. It's all I. But Daenerys was thinking we. She's like, we are the, I am Dothraki. We are the Dothraki. I am a member of Khal Drogo's Dothraki horde. She was thinking about her people, which was the Dothraki. Where Viserys, all he cared about was just getting that crown. And having Khal Drogo give him that crown in the way that he did, he gave him a golden crown, not the way that Viserys was hoping. But I think it's a good lesson to be like, you need to be thankful for what you have. And if you want to go ahead and brag about it, and just work or ask and demand more, that could screw you in the end. And it definitely screwed Viserys.
Well, that and the lesson of if you're a dude and you have a sister and you basically sell her off to somebody, and then be prepared for her to get her husband that she didn't really want to be married to come back and kill your ass. but and another thing is when Daenerys basically, you were talking about her more or less being abused by Drogo, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then when she's that one time when she like pretty much just was like, no, wait, and then she kind of like takes over, and it just like it confuses the hell out of him, and then that's when he started to actually fall in love with her.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point that you just brought up there. And
that was
what you had also just said there, as you brought up that I had, it said about her being abused, and then that part where she's like, let me be in charge, essentially, while they're having intercourse, and then in the end, whenever she emerges from the fire,
Brendan,
yes,
how moist was it?
It was pretty moist. That was moist.
That was a pretty moist moment.
Yeah, that was a
Dude,
we should do a moistest scene of the episode of the season. I just thought of that. We should have to do that. A moistest scene.
I was just thinking, dude, you should do a well-made edited video of like the moistest moments of Game of Thrones.
I will have to consider doing that. But before we got sidetracked there, and that was a good sidetrack. I like that. What I was going to say is we even like people are like, oh, you know, they don't develop characters, or we saw an entire character arc with Daenerys in the first season, having her going from the, you know, being sold off basically Khal Drogo by her brother, taking, you know, falling in love with Khal Drogo and having Khal Drogo fall in love with her, watching her brother burn and die, and watching her go into the fires. You know, watching her go into the fire and emerge victorious with 3 dragons. You know, you saw a character arc right there before we even knew what else she was going to do. If it was just one season, you'd say Daenerys, holy shit, she came from nothing and now she's something.
And like, okay, so Ned Stark, when he got beheaded, you know, I was like, oh, come on, really? You know, and like, no, come on, something happened to save him. But then again, I'm like, well, it is Sean Bean, so, you know.
Oh no, not
but,
again.
But like, another thing about this show was the underdog aspect of it. You know, with Tyrion, right? Tyrion,
Yep.
the dwarf.
Yeah, that's Tyrion.
With Tyrion and Jon Snow, right? It's just like, you know, from the moment you saw both of those characters, you were like rooting for them, you know, instantly. And like, you know, like Peter Dinklage, first of all, is like an amazing actor. I don't think there's anything that he's been in that I haven't liked, you know. But you know, that character is small in stature, you know, you know, physically only, you know, that like just his physical size is the only thing small about him. You know, the character is like huge, you know, and you know, it's the same with Jon Snow. You're like, you know, this kid is you know, supposedly living with his father, but you know, having to put up with Mrs. Stark, you know, and just the tension there. It was that was another awesome aspect of the show. And then when you know, then when you like actually find out that, you know, you know, Ned wasn't his dad but his uncle, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But which makes me think that the one scene where before Jon Snow goes up to take his place up at the wall.
Yeah.
And, you know, Nedard was like, you know, you're of my blood, or, you know, you're a Stark, you'll always be.
And then whatever he says, I'll tell you. He asked about his mother or something. He's like, I'll tell you later.
But yeah.
You know, I think that's a, you know, a great point as well. There's so many hints to what's to come in season 1. You know, and what we're seeing, honestly, you know, season 1 with Littlefinger, you know, we're introduced to obviously we're also introduced to a lot of politics within the realm. And I'm gonna say, Black Angus, I'll have you comment on this here. You know, we're introduced to Littlefinger, to Varys, to the Kingsguard, with Jamie and with everything else. But I think I'm sorry, I thought I had to burp there, but I did not. But what I think too, season 1, it balances action and politics. And you know, season 1, if you want to look at it and you want to compare it, I know a lot of people that might watch this now or watch this in the future. It will be, you know, a comparison. Essentially, you could say season 1 is the prequel of Star Wars, the prequel series of Star Wars, episodes 1, 2, and 3, where you have the political buildup, you have the betrayal, and you have the murder. as I'm going to say, Darth Vader murdered Anakin Skywalker, but as in the Lannisters murdered Ned Stark. So I think basically season 1, kind of sums up, and it kind of is that prequel essence where it gives you the nuggets that you need. However, with Star Wars, we had 4, 5, and 6. We knew it was to come. With Game of Thrones, yeah, you had the books, but most people watching the show did not read the books, I'm going to assume. So it gave them those nuggets to be like, oh, okay. So
I'm one of them. I have not read any of the books.
Dude, they read.
I think that's a common theme across the board. So Black Angus, going off of that, kind of like a little rant there where it's basically looking at how it sets up the future. Like, what other things about season 1 do you think just stands out to you?
It's like the first episode, you get that prologue with the White Walkers and the Whites. Although you don't really understand the extent. And then throughout the show, you hear talk of like, oh, dragons of old, and oh, there's dragon eggs, and then it ends with, oh, they're real and they hatch because they're in the fire. But it's funny because like throughout the whole show, like her dragons are kind of like plot devices. Somewhat. They're not really characters, but plot devices for her getting an army and stuff and being in power, and like prophecies reborn, etc. But the show, like, you realize now you can't help but see the marketing of like dragons for trying to get into the show now. So there's gonna be dragons. But season 1 really is a character story, and like there's not as fantastical as this world is, like medieval fantasy. It's very much focused on characters and like real progression, as opposed to relying on the kind of Lord of the Rings. I would say Lord of the Rings fantasy elements. So like, oh, the elves are you got the Rivendell, you got the orcs and stuff. You got the people across the sea that are helping with Sauron's cause, etc. You got Mordor. You get the Shelob, etc. Like none of that really takes precedent in Game of Thrones. It's very much a people story, and season 1 I think really subverts your expectation in that regard.
Subverts your
yeah, and it's funny too is like talk about like there's always that Last Jedi defensive, like you feel like because it subverted your expectations, it didn't prove your Snoke theory or your Rey theory, right? It's like this is like watch Game of Thrones. It's completely fine to subvert our expectations. You expect Ned Stark to have the upper hand because he's a morally righteous guy and stuff, but he gets his head whacked on because he shows his hand trying to be kind to Cersei instead of just yanking rug out from under her when he figures it out. And the whole idea of the Game of Thrones, I think it's just really cool. Where it's like, this is like political intrigue. This is I don't know. Like the biggest thing I could say as far as the prequel element with season 1 is damn it! I had it thought and I didn't write it down. Lost it. But yeah, overall the fantasy elements are very minuscule. And I think that services the show really well, because if they relied on the dragons and the freaking like the Lord of Light and all that shit, like I don't think it'd be as fun a show and as intriguing. Like the backstabbing of the show really shocks you because like, oh my god, they did this to this character, throughout the show. And you're like, fuck. I don't know. That's all. I wish I could remember that point. It's probably gonna come to me in a moment. So
I think what you just said there, that they have the backstabbing and things like that, where they minimalize the fantasy elements essentially. I think that's good too, because I think they knew that fantasy shows, when you look at them, there's a few good ones and there's many bad ones. So I think them slowly introducing the lore and them kind of like having mentions of the dragons, mentions of the White Walkers, but you're not confronted with them. You hear all about them, and they're a critical part of the universe within the realm of Game of Thrones. And the fact that they alluded to them, I think, is a great thing that they did. And I'm kind of getting lost for words what I'm saying here, but basically what you're picking up here, I think that them not relying on the fantasy element to draw people in. Oh, dragons. when was the first time we really got to see dragons burn people? That wasn't until season 3 or 4, but on a mass scale. When did we see it? We saw it in season 7 at a mass scale. We saw it at, in season 7, episode 4, the shortest episode of the season, unfortunately, but one of the best. That's when we saw the dragons at full force. And that dragon was just Drogon, to be honest. That was just one dragon. And the fact that it took them 7 seasons to really unleash the full might of a dragon, I think that's perfect character building. I think it's building that, it deserves respect. So Hallmark or Superfan Adam Shawhan, do you have any comments on, what I've just said or what Black Angus has said recently?
Go ahead.
I think that one of the things about the show is, like you've been saying, it would work in a variety of timelines. It doesn't have to be ancient, medieval and dragons type of stuff. It could be modern day, or it could even be like futuristic times. The storyline would work in a variety of scenarios like that. That's what I like about it.
Yeah, I think that's a good point too. So what one thing that I'd like to do here as well is do a who we lost in season 1, and we're gonna go through the death timeline of season 1 by episode. I have it up here. So we will pay our respects right now to those that we lost in season 1 of Game of Thrones. So prepare, make sure you have your tissues nearby to catch your tears. And here we go. Episode 1, we lost Weimar Royst. He was killed by a White Walker. We lost Garrett. He was killed by a White Walker. And we also lost Will, who survived the White Walker encounter. However, he was executed by Ned Stark. And we also, the big death, we lost Jon Arryn, the former hand of the king. May they rest in peace. That is episode 1. Episode 2, The King's Road. We had 2 deaths. We had the assassin that was killed by Bran's wolf. And we had Micah, who was killed by the Hound. Do you guys remember Micah's death?
Yes.
It was that small child. Episode 3, thankfully, we had no deaths. Episode 4, we had 1 death. Sir Hugh, killed by the Hound, or killed by the Mountain in the unfortunate tournament where he had basically a gigantic splinter shoved through his neck. In episode 5, we had a slew of deaths. We had Kurleket, Willis Woad, Will, Heward, and Jory Castle. Jory Castle was killed by Jaime Lannister. He was Ned Stark's right-hand man, killed by Jaime Lannister with a dagger to the eye, unfortunately. Willis Woad, Kurlet, and Heward were Stark bannermen that were also killed in that unfortunate event. In episode 6, called A Golden Crown, we had Waylon, who was killed by Robb Stark, who was part of the little wildling tribe that wanted to kill Bran Stark or take him hostage. And Stiv was killed by Theon Greyjoy, who proved his loyalty to House Stark. We also had Vardis Eggen, who was killed by Bronn in the battle at the Vale. That was awesome. That was an incredible little fight where Tyrion chose Bronn, or Bronn volunteered to be Tyrion's champion. And we had the big one of Viserys Targaryen, where we had a crown for a king. Episode 7, we had a wine cellar was killed. He was dragged by a horse. And we had Robert Baratheon killed by a boar. R.I.P. King Robert Baratheon. The pointy end, episode 8, we had Vian Poole, Mordain, Syrio Forel, Syrio was one of my favorite characters of season 1. We'll get to that here in a second. We had Stable Boy killed by Arya. We had Mago, who was killed by Khal Drogo, and we had Othor, who was burned by Jon Snow. The first instance of a White Walker attacking someone of the Night's Watch. We also had in episode 9, we had Otho, who was killed by Jorah Mormont, rogue Dothraki, basically. And we had Eddard Stark, who was executed by Ilyn Payne, unfortunately. Episode 10, we had 2 big deaths, one of them being very major, Khal Drogo, and we had Miri Mazdur. Miri was the witch that had the black magic basically put on Khal Drogo, and that led to the birth of the Dragon Queen, the Khaleesi, Daenerys Targaryen. So may we all take a moment and remember those that we lost this season. R.I.P. What was some of the most memorable deaths of this season? Black Angus, do you want to go first?
Besides Ned, I would say it's always been kind of ambiguous to me. I haven't really understood it. So, Daenerys' child, did the black magic transform her baby? Was the baby the actual?
Well, I think what it was
lateral for Khal Drogo. Like I never understood what happened, or if Khaleesi is like she thinks she's sterile throughout the show. After that, like I've never understood that whole sequence.
Well, I say what to hopefully this will give some light to it. Miri Mazdur, she was a black magic witch, basically, and she even said like throughout the show, there's evidence that she is a witch kind of. She controls it. And basically, no, it was her village that was pillaged in episode 9. And her men, everybody was killed, except she was spared by Daenerys. And what I believe is that she put a curse on Khal Drogo, Daenerys, so that their firstborn child would die, basically, and that Khal would die eventually as well. And if you remember back in season 7, whenever Daenerys says, I can't have kids or whatever, and Jon asks, who was the one that told you that? She's like, oh, it was the witch that killed my husband. And Jon says, have you ever considered trying to find a better source? I think it was that she had put a curse that lasted very short on Khal Drogo and on Daenerys that their child would die. That's my interpretation. That is completely up to, debate. And I'd love to hear if you guys have different opinions on that. But that's kind of the way that I took it in.
Well, Khal Drogo had to die so he could become Aquaman.
But that's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Not a lot of water found on near Vice Dothrak, unfortunately. Any other deaths, Black Angus? I know we had Ciro Farrell. I was going to say it was a big one for me.
Yeah, I don't know. I never cared about like the way they've showed the Bravosi in the first season felt kind of corny, like with the mini face men and all that. It's developed, but the first season it felt corny, and I didn't give a shit about him. I thought he was kind of a flamer, if you will. I'm like, I don't care if he dies. I don't like the guy who killed him either, but I was like, whatever. Let's see, someone else. Because I guess understanding the characters and how the North sees their king or their warden as opposed to like Southerners in this scenario, I like the whole idea of the North really upholds like integrity and honor and stuff higher than like King's Landing in the South, and how there's an expectation when he beheads the guy. He's like, oh yeah, if like you're gonna pass out a death sentence, you should be the one to kill them. You shouldn't, pass off to the executioner. And so Ned does his own executing, and how it's like, oh, watch his father know if you didn't, and it's like, it's kind of like hunting or something. Like, no, that first kill is always going to shock you as a kid, and even more so if you're in a time where you're judge, jury, and executioner for your underlings and stuff. I think it really set the tone for like the show and the culture of the North and stuff, and understanding Ned Stark and honor. So even though that character, you don't know him at all, he's just some scared guy who deserted the Night's Watch. It reflected a lot for the show, and so I like it for that reason.
I think so too, and I agree as well. Superfan, Shawhan, or we also have Frank and the Win Your Dog Clan in here. So Frank, do you have any Game of Thrones deaths that you enjoy or that hit you?
I think the worst death had to be the White Walker because nobody saw that coming.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy.
I mean, when you see these dead things that just seem to be able to withstand everything, you get them caught on fire and see them run away and then explode. That was awesome. Because we've already kind of mentioned about all the other people, so I had to have the backup for the bad guys.
Well, hey, while we're still talking here, give us, as we just said, some of the main deaths. What was some deaths other than maybe, or what did you think of Ned Stark's death when you first saw it? Obviously, if you hadn't read the book, that was a complete shocker to you, as it was to myself, because at the time I hadn't read the book yet. And I'm gonna have to take a Tyrion and piss off the wall right now. So Black Angus, Superfan and Hallmark, if you guys want to talk about the shock value of Ned Stark's death, please feel free.
Oh, I mean, for me, like when I saw that, and I saw Sansa, right? Sansa.
Yeah.
When I saw her, I was just like, man, I'm like, I hope that little freaking pipsqueak of a freaking king just gets it hard, I mean, like, I was just wishing for a really gruesome death for him, but I mean, it's like, hey honey, come here and watch me sentence your father to death. It's like, I mean, that's romance right there. I don't care who you are.
Yeah, for me, the whole Ned Stark thing, like, it was first time I saw it, just like, I guess if you're watching a film, you can kind of not be as surprised by this kind of stuff, because a good director is going to film things for a reason, whether it's like a purposeful shot for a scene or if it's just like a fleeting moment. It's like everything that's captured on film and edited, it should be deliberate and for purpose. Like something I always point out to illustrate this is again in A Monster Calls, Liam Neeson plays this tree monster that you think is a figment of imagination for this kid, and Felicity Jones, there's a picture of her character with Liam Neeson that the camera passes by really quick. And so looking back, watching the show, it's like, oh yeah, like this, they're I don't think they would have made such a focus to show Arya coming to the scepter, whatever, during Stark's treasonous. What do you call it? His admittance of treason, his false admittance. I don't think they would have set it up if it wasn't going to go that way. So it's something I'm kind of aware of looking back. Like, oh, this was on purpose. This is for a reason. It was definitely shocking the first time. Like, oh wow, like okay, he's gonna go safe to the Night's Watch, be with Jon Snow, and he can tell him whoever his parents are, and oh, he's dead. What the hell?
Like, yeah, didn't see that coming. That's for sure. Just having watched the show, never read the books. You're sitting there and you're rooting for him. He's hunting because he's got that hint of who the bastard son is. I do believe the previous king. Pre the boar hunt accident. Trying to find him. And he has all these clues, like you said. Instead of pulling the rug out from underneath Cersei, he doesn't. And instead gets the rug pulled out from underneath him. Then gives us the character building for Arya, who just becomes one of the world's biggest badasses, kind of like Tyrion. But yeah, that was awesome to say the least, because all I could think of when I saw that happen again is just like, oh no, not again. Now I'm dead. And it's not even that far into the first season. So you're just like, man, you got to be kidding me. But yeah, it definitely plays out. And I have to agree with you, Angus. I believe if they were to have relied on the CGI as heavily as what other shows have done, I don't think we'd be where we are today. Because if they would have just like overran us with White Walkers that weren't processed right, and or even too much of the drag. I mean, we have a good story here where the CGI is there, but it's not the entire story. You know, we have an actual story that they then add the CGI to instead of the opposite. And I think that's what really makes the story as good as it is.
Does anybody?
And it's not like you can rewatch it and you look back at like what's the prequel series of Star Wars. You don't look back at episode 2 and 3 and be like, oh shit, you know, that's all CGI. With Game of Thrones, it's hard to decipher which is CGI and which is like props and sets.
Does anybody have any stats on how many times Sean Bean has died on film?
Technology. Let me try to look that up here.
I think it's 8 times.
I swear everything I've seen him in, he's been killed.
Maybe that's how he pays his debts to the White Walkers of Hollywood. Kind of like Craster's.
Maybe.
All right, so I found a graphic that says it's from IGN. It says Sean Bean, R.I.P. 1959 to 1986, 1989, 1990, 1994, 1991, 1992, 1995, 1998, 2000, 2001, 2002, 2003, 2004, 2005, 2007, 2009, and 2010. So there's his deaths by year. And the article said the many deaths of Sean Bean, nobody dies it better.
He died in Goldeneye, died in Game of Thrones, he died in Silent Hill, or Silent Hill 2, he died in Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, Silent Hill, Goldeneye. Iconic ones right there.
Let's see what else.
Maybe he has like a sequel phobia or something, you know. So he's like, I'll take the part if you promise to kill the character. You know?
That's right. One and done, baby. One and done.
No, go on, sorry.
I didn't say anything there.
Oh no, I think I interrupted Frank. I was like, no, go ahead.
Oh yeah, no, it's just one and done, man. One and done. That's his thing. He says, hey, in my contract, one movie, I'm done. No prequels, no continuing the story on. Ice me, baby. That's it. I'm here. Kill me. Done. Next movie. Next project.
Yeah.
Because I would actually be down for a Boromir prequel. I know you get a little hint of it.
That would be pretty cool.
I would like a Boromir prequel. That'd be cool. But he's too old now. It wouldn't look right.
Yeah. And so we're at the hour mark here. We're gonna try to keep these streams between an hour and a half. What I want to do right now is just kind of go down the line and see what grade would you give season 1 out of 10, 1 through 10, 10 being the highest. What is your review of season 1 of Game of Thrones?
But wait a minute. First of all, before we start on that, I would like to note that Brandon went on his pee break before the hour mark.
I did. Yes, I did. Yes.
Yeah.
Is that like a requirement every hour because you're so moist?
No, yeah. Usually, I mean, otherwise we're just gonna start sitting here leaking moisture, and we gotta take care of that.
But the question that needs to be answered is: are your boxers on inside out or backwards again?
No, they are on straightforward.
Yeah. Boxer check.
Boxer check.
For those of you that want to hear that story, go to about the midpoint of the final Friday Moist Cast, which was aired 2 days ago. Check it out on my channel, and you'll get the full story of what happened there. Black Angus, I'll tell you as soon as we go off air here.
Sorry, I had to, Brandon. It's just it was just that good that it just had to come back. But yes, the moist is so moist that about every hour he's just got to release some moisture because there's just too much.
Right. Yeah. My apologies for sending us off on a tangent. I'm sorry.
No. We just have a small bladder here. That's really the big issue. But let's go with Hallmark. Since you brought up that, let's go Hallmark, and then Frank and the Shawhan Wiener Dog Clan, and then Black Angus, then myself. Give season 1 a grade, and tell us why you give that grade, and that's how we'll get ready to close out the show.
Well, I mean, I'm gonna take the easy route and just give it a freaking A plus or a 10 out of 10 or whatever. I mean, it's just that good.
All right, Frank and the Shaw Hamlier Dog Clan.
All right, I would have to say, as for season 1, as a full season by itself, if it would have ended, I would definitely have to go with a 10 out of 10. I feel that it started off perfectly, character-wise, starting to build, even though we had many losses. But it also explains so much later down the line that, as you had said, when you go back and rewatch what you've seen, and then you catch parts that you wouldn't really, have caught until you get to the later seasons. I think it was done right. So I'm going to stick with a 10 out of 10.
And Black Angus?
I give it an 8. Some of the scene work and stuff, some of the sets aren't quite believable in season 1. Although a lot of it really is, looking back, like, wow, they're pretty consistent. Like with King's Landing and stuff, wherever they film for King's Landing, I assume it's like a real place for a lot of like the wall shots and stuff. Even if they have to like CGI or twist that, edit it some way. A lot of it looks good. Winterfell looks pretty good, but there's just a few sets look really wanky or just cheap, like when Arya is fighting Syria or whatever. Those look. There's some of the camera work too, and there's lacking some action. You're hearing about these things. It is an introduction, kind of like Star Wars. The first Star Wars, like there's hints of something grander that's happened before that's led to this kind of sterile state. Kind of like with Rob's rebellion that made them friends. So yeah, I give it a solid 8. It's really good. Looking back, it's great. Better than a lot of introductory seasons for big shows, but could improve. And you're kind of hindered with like so many characters being introduced that like this is setting, eventually they're going to be thinned out. The herd's going to be thinned out. You're going to know your main people, but I think that is a hindrance as well. So it's all day.
Yeah, and so I'm going to go with 7.4 out of 10. That's still pretty high. But what I'm going to say is I would give probably most season 1s of shows that last a while, usually between a 5 and a 7. They're usually not the best season that is put out there. But I think season 1 of Game of Thrones gets the extra 0.4 from me to tip it over the 7 scale is because it did such a good job of introducing so many characters that it did. It was still a bit overwhelming. However, it tried to do a great job in balancing the introduction of such characters. Yes, it did lack a little bit of action. It was more of a political, let's set this thing up. But I think it also did a great job doing that. And obviously the season scores will probably go higher and higher from here. So we're going to start at 7.4. That way I don't set myself up to have to try to go higher and higher and higher like crazy. So with that, everybody, I think we will conclude our season 1 discussion of Game of Thrones. Superfan Adam Shawhan, Hallmark Channel Jeremy, and then finally Black Angus Reviews. If you guys would like to have anything that you'd like to plug or shill, please do so. And I will start with Superfan Adam Shawhan.
I just want to thank you for letting me come on. It was great to be able to relax and talk with this over with you lovely gentlemen. Had a blast. Thanks again. Can't wait to see you guys on the next one.
All right, and thanks as always, Superfan Adam Shawhan. How about you, Hallmark Channel Jeremy? Do you have anything you'd like to plug?
Yeah, well, I would like to plug all the winter is coming memes that have
Yes,
blessed the internet since this show has come on. It's I mean, you gave the season a 7 out of 10, or I mean if you factor in the memes, that would bring it up to a 10 out of 10. So
Oh, the
I'm just
memes
saying.
they're in a world of their own.
Yeah.
And
But no, just go. If you would please go check out my meager little channel and do the old like, subscribe, all that happy stuff. So other than that, yeah, that's it.
all right, and yeah, make sure to check out Superfan Adam Shawhan, Frank and the Wiener Dog Clan, and Hallmark Channel Jeremy's channels, and my co-host Black Angus Reviews.
Well, thank you all for joining or coming into the stream and getting to this point. Yeah, I was really excited when I first came across Brandon Moist, and he had this idea off air with the Rookie Critic. And I love Game of Thrones and need a reason to rewatch them. So I'm really glad this all came together and that we're starting this off. I cover film philosophy in the NFL, so check out my channel. I got 2 new videos. One is a serious video about Star Wars and objectivity. It's critiquing the lack of criticism for some reason from these well-established channels. Mine personally, I picked was Stuckman because I was very attached to him, and then Last Jedi came out and I saw it. I'm like, wow, this guy threw everything out the window that built his foundation of like, I respect this guy. This is why this is why I watch him, because I trust his opinion before I pay money to the theater to see a movie. I don't pay to go see C's and below. I want to see B+ and above. And so, yeah, he really became a shill after Last Jedi, so I don't trust him anymore. So there's that video, and then I made a funny one right after called The Trump Awakens. It's making fun of Haldo and Elizabeth Warren, inspired by the Trump meme 2020th for Elizabeth Warren. So go check those out if you like some political humor. It's very rare that I have enough comedic bone in me to make a video, so hopefully you enjoy it. People who have watched it loved it, and look forward to these bi-weekly streams with Moist and whoever else we can get on with us, like the Shaw Hands and Hallmark Channel Jeremy. Hopefully Proper Jeremy comes on, and just love being in this community.
Yeah, and I think that's very well said there, Black Angus. And make sure you guys all check out his channel. Link in the description below. Definitely check it out. Give him a subscription if you're not subscribed already. And to close it out here, I'd like to thank you all. I have hit the 50 subscriber mark, and so thank you for basically getting me 50 subs in less than a month. That's awesome. And we're going to continue to be putting out some content here on the channel. Newly named Moist Visions Inc., or MVI for short. So in 2 weeks from now, you will see myself as well as some special guests on Black Angus Reviews channel, where we will talk about Season 2 of Game of Thrones. So if you have not seen Season 2 yet, or you want to get that rewatch in, please do so. And in 2 weeks from now, we will be on Black Angus Reviews' channel discussing Season 2. And we have it planned out that essentially we're going to do it every other week, rotating channels. And that essentially that should lead us up to the Season 8 premiere. And then from there, we will discuss whether we want to do live post-episode reactions, how we want to do that. We'll figure that out and then let you guys know. But for now, I'd like to thank you all for tuning in, and even if you're tuning in the future for future Game of Thrones content. I'd love to thank you guys, and I hope you've had a great Moist stream. And so I'm going to end it with my new tagline, get moist, get voiced. Thank you all for tuning in, guys.